Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a seriously fascinating topic. We're going to explore that messy, complex intersection of global banking, corporate ethics, and, of course, the ultimate bottom line, profitability. It's this incredibly unique space where really good intentions collide with cold, hard data, and I've got to tell you, the results are probably not what you'd expect. Let's jump right in. So here's the central mystery we're unraveling today. What actually happens when the so-called good guys of banking make a mistake? Look, we all know that claiming the moral high ground looks fantastic on a billboard or, splashed across an annual report. But establishing your business as this flawless, ethical pillar of the financial community, it actually comes with some massive and totally unexpected hidden risks. Turns out, when you build your entire brand on being the good guy, falling from grace hurts a whole lot more. To figure out why this happens, we're grounding our analysis today in a brand new, peer-reviewed study straight out of the Journal of Islamic Accounting and Business Research. This paper meticulously unpacks global evidence on how different types of banks respond to ESG controversies. And just as a quick refresher, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance issues. So this isn't just somebody's opinion piece, we are looking at rigorous, heavy-duty academic analysis here. And to give you a sense of just how rock-solid this data is, the researchers didn't just casually look at a handful of local bank branches. No, they analyzed a massive panel of 547 banks across 59 different countries, sweeping through 24 years of data from the year 2000 all the way to 2024. That scale is absolutely wild. It gives us an incredibly robust data set to trust as we unpack these findings. All right, Section 1, the ESG banking boom. Over the last couple of decades, ESG has basically taken over finance. Hitting these standards is now seen as absolutely crucial for building corporate goodwill. But does it actually make a bank more money? Academics have been in a massive tug-of-war over this. On one side, you've got legitimacy theory. This camp argues that spending money on ESG is amazing for business. It builds stakeholder trust, pumps up your reputation, and ultimately brings in higher profits and a premium market valuation. But then on the flip side, you have neoclassical theory. And they argue the exact opposite. They say, look, spending all this money on environmental and social causes, it's just a drain on resources. It bumps up your costs, puts you at a competitive disadvantage, and eats into your profits. So, who's actually right? Which brings us to Section 2, Islamic versus conventional banks. To really test these two theories, the researchers pitted two very distinct financial models against each other. On one hand, you've got conventional banks. These operate on your standard financial models, no inherent built-in religious guardrails. On the other hand, you have Islamic banks. These institutions operate strictly under Sharia principles. That means absolutely no charging interest, no engaging in excessive uncertainty, and zero funding for socially harmful activities. Their guiding objectives, which are known as Maqasid al-Sharia, naturally champion socially and environmentally responsible policies. So, by their very design, Islamic banks have this built-in foundational alignment with ESG principles. Let's look at the numbers in Section 3, Does ESG drive profits? So, the researchers run all 24 years of data through their models, and the results are pretty decisive. The data firmly backs up legitimacy theory. Across the board, on a global scale, higher ESG scores are positively linked to a higher return on assets and a higher return on equity. In plain English, having strong ESG performance literally enhances a bank's operational performance and creates more value for its shareholders. Being good is, for sure, highly profitable. But here's where things get really interesting. The data shows that Islamic banks actually get a much stronger profit boost from good ESG performance than conventional banks do. Why? Well, because Islamic banking naturally complements ESG goals right out of the gate through its existing ethical governance. Their profitability gets this massive amplified boost. It's basically the perfect synergy. The market sees what they're doing and it rewards them handsomely for it. Now let's look at the dark side. In Section 4, the reputational track. Okay, so if being good makes you so much money, what happens when a bank slips up? First, we need to define an ESG controversy. Simply put, it's the very visible gap between what a bank publicly claims to do and what they're actually doing behind closed doors. And ironically, the more a business hypes up its ESG commitments, the more of a target they become for media and investors. As this whole ESG boom has accelerated, we've seen a massive spike in these highly visible failures. The scandals, the regulatory fines, the terrible news cycles. And that brings us to the ultimate plot twist in this research. The data reveals that Islamic banks are, quote, more adversely impacted by ESG controversies, highlighting greater susceptibility to negative ESG news. That is wild, right? Even though Islamic banks get a bigger financial boost from having good ESG scores, they take a significantly heavier hit to their profitability from bad news than conventional banks do. So, why does that happen? Let's unpack it in Section 5, the high expectations trap. Why exactly do the most ethically structured banks fall the hardest when things go south? The research points out a few major reasons. First off, just having a label like Islamic or ethical automatically raises stakeholder expectations through the roof. So when a failure does happen, people don't just see it as a minor procedural error. They see it as a massive, fundamental breach of trust. The study also noted that sometimes these banks focus so heavily on social pillars that they create blind spots in their environmental practices. And finally, these institutions rely incredibly heavily on reputational capital. It's kind of like the rubber band effect. If a notoriously unhealthy person eats junk food, nobody cares. But if a famous health guru is caught sneaking a donut, the media backlash is brutal, because the initial expectation of purity was so remarkably high. The rubber band was pulled way tighter, so the snapback hurts a lot more. And that right there is the core paradox of our whole analysis today. The stronger a business's moral underpinning, the greater its vulnerability to reputational damage. When you embed ethics deeply into your business model, you absolutely create a high-reward environment. We saw that with the boosted profit margins. But you also inherently create a remarkably high-risk environment right alongside it. It's just a critical dynamic to understand, whether you're an investor analyzing risk or just an everyday consumer figuring out where to park your money. So I'm going to leave you with one final, pretty provocative thought to chew on today. If claiming the moral high ground automatically puts a giant target on your back and basically guarantees you'll fall harder when you stumble, is the ethical premium truly worth the risk? The data definitively shows the financial rewards are there, but man, the tightrope these institutions have to walk is incredibly thin, and there is absolutely no safety net if you break that trust. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this on The Explainer. Keep questioning the data, and I'll catch you next time.